all really boils down to two things: reputation and compatibility. So on this first part, I'm going to help you with the compatibility. Step 1, start as sexually charged as possible to assess if she's actually sexually attracted to you. Step 2, create a judgment-free zone. Go into that space of accepting your own whoreness so that she can't try to present a desexualized social mask. Step 3, talk about your own experiences on a borderline braggadocious level, right? Step 4, bring up different types of orgasms. Assess out how aware she is and knowledgeable she is about her own body. Which ones she's had and which ones are her favorite. If you have neither the skill nor the equipment to give her her favorite orgasmic experience, nor to give her a new one that can encapsulate that previous experience, you're not compatible. Not for a relationship. Most of the rest of it is just about energy and skill level. And skills are things that you can learn. Energy is something you can learn, but it's not worth it for one brand new woman that you come across. Do that on your own time. And most of the skills that are non-penetrative are going to be things that you're going to be pretty good learning from talking to women who deal with other women and learning their bodies. Once you learn their bodies, it's going to be pretty easy. So don't even worry about that. The main thing you need to assess is if you are physically compatible with the woman and if she's sexually attracted to you. This is Coach Brody. Some free game.
Nigga, why did you do that?
The hoes are watching.
That nigga is just like me.
What I'm telling you right here will remove you from being in a position where your naturally occurring dom subdynamics, because that's how I look at it, your naturally occurring dom subdynamics, you want to remove any sense of abuse from them, right? And I believe that the greatest way of doing that is by making domination a reward. You know, one thing that I learned from my father growing up, and it's really funny. Have y'all ever thought about how, no Diddy, y'all ever thought about how when you're with somebody and you really getting freaky, like some egregious nasty work, the way that you pretty much say, or they say to you the same things that were said when you was getting your ass whooped as a child? I thought about that, right? Like assume the position, move your fucking hand, like all that other stuff, right? You know, you're going to learn better to listen next time. But I'm going to tell you something that I learned from my father. I know this is kind of weird putting all this stuff together. But what I learned from my father as a child, because I grew up in separate households, sometimes with my mother, sometimes with my father would make a thing of making sure that he never disciplined me out of anger. Right? That he never disciplined me out of anger. There are times where he has, and some of those times where it could be definitely absolutely categorized as abuse, right? But because he created enough fear of the possibility of how bad it could get, but then the rest of the time he was able to handle things with a certain sense of mutual respect, it created an environment where, one, the logic typically would line up, so I would respect if I was getting beat or something like that, right? Or he wouldn't be tripping over little stuff all the time, right? So you're able to respect it. What I'm talking about here is dominant and submissive empathy. I know it sounds messed up to put it in the context of, you know, getting beatings and discipline with children and whatnot, but it is relevant. You know, I remember hearing stories that my father would tell me about how there's this band director when he was going to high school, and this band director bought him a drum. He was trying to go into ROTC or JROTC, and one day the band director heard him cursing around Subliminal or something like that, punched him in his chest, and then sent him and made him join the band. But him joining the band was what put him in a position where he could get a scholarship to go to college. He went to the same college I went to. That's the same college where he met my mother, South Carolina State University, right? Which I was the poet laureate of, back to back, of the entire university, right? So as we move forward from here, what I'm talking about in this conversation is that there's a difference between how things used to be versus how things are. The Overton window shifts, and you can't just try to do the same things the way people used to do things in the past and to think that that's going to be an effective strategy for life, for your freedom, for your health, for the health of your children or whoever's under you. Understand that in the grand scheme of karma and dharma, right? There's ways that being a leader and divvying out discipline is such a powerful thing, right? It still is affected by karma, but it still is expected of you, right? Means that either you have to be righteous in your judgments about divvying out rewards and punishments, or for the most part, you need to be integrated to where you have enough stability within yourself and within your life to where you can afford a certain level of provision in whatever way is necessary for whoever is underneath your leadership, underneath your authority. You give them the benefit of the doubt. You separate yourself from the fundamental attribution error, and then you allow them the space and the freedom to kind of decide what direction they need to go in for themselves. But if you're not in a position where you have the resources to do that, you need to be able to have your stuff together, right? And there's also times where, let's say this is ultimately your ship, or the responsibilities that you're given to this person who's in your ship, that's not going to sink your ship if they fail at the task. But once real things are at stake, then it's a different conversation, and sometimes a little bit of forcefulness is necessary. Sometimes a little bit of sternness, informal speech is necessary, right? So, when you become integrated, you're moving from a space of understanding that you've reached a point where a person has to continue to move on and grow in who they are, right? And that this can't be connected to or attached to who you are and what you're trying to do, and you allow them the space to live their own life. It's just difficult to do that in a position where you don't have the excess of resources to where you feel secure in doing that. That's where it becomes a little bit more indirectly transactional. There's nothing wrong with that. It's like, I'll do what I have to do to help you, as long as you're doing what you need to do. Listen, I'm damn near a 30-year-old man, right? There's times in my life where I try to be like, I'm gonna do everything on my own. I wouldn't say I don't need help, but that's how I would act. And my fathers had to check me. Like, son, you're not a throwaway. You could be 30 years old, it doesn't matter to me. I'm always gonna be your father until I die. So if you need some help, I got you. Just as long as you're doing your part, I'm gonna help you either way. But as long as you're doing your part, it makes it easier for me. And I'm like, you know what? I can't argue with that type of logic. See, that's how the integrated supersedes the dominant, right? Now, understand, a lot of these women out here are going to try to present themselves as if they're integrated when they're not integrated, right? And once you understand that that's what's going on in these scenarios, it's a different type of conversation, right? Understand that the foundation is of a program is setting conditions through which you will feel safe with this person. That when you have a program, you've done the inner work, the shadow work, to know these are the things that I'm going to require at a minimum level in order for me to create an environment where this person can feel what they perceive to be unconditionally safe. It's about perception. So when you set a standard and you say, I'm pre-qualified for this standard, of how I need to be treated, how I need to be viewed, how a person needs to interact with me. Once you've determined that you're pre-qualified for that standard, then you interact with those who feel that way and treat you in that way. Once you interact with people who feel that way about you and they treat you in that way, and this becomes your norm, then you create like a speed limit. There is a line in front of where your actual real boundaries are, the things that will actually trigger you. You create a little bit of emotional space while still having some sense of closeness to people, some sense of warmth to yourself. But there is a cost. You don't get that same level of like exuberance and enthusiasm and attachment and excitement about things, right? That is the real cost. You have to find that in other ways. But what you have to understand is that when you're doing things that way, not everybody is on that level. So sometimes the integrated choice is walking away, right? If you recognize, okay, I don't have the resources to deal with this, right? So, you know what? I'm going to try to rise above it. You know, the integrated choice can be several things, but one thing people don't understand as well is that sometimes the integrated choice is understanding that you're interacting with an individual whose nervous system requires and it needs certain things, right? You might be dealing with somebody who's gone through trauma in their life, or they've gotten to a point where they accept, right? They accept that they're going to need a little toxicity, right? They're going to need to be manipulated a little bit. They're going to need some sex that borders on sadomasochism. They're going to need an experience that borders on what the average Overton window of people would consider abuse. And what I'm presenting to you is that you need to deal with women who are attracted enough to you to where, rather than you being in a position where you're desperate for and you desire to have these experiences yourself, that you deal with women who like you enough to where they want that pretty much more than you do, so that you're the one who's operating on having boundaries, right? When you're the one who's operating on having boundaries and consent, the woman has to gain consent from you, and she has to, get her behavior in order so that she can get some more penis, so that she can get dominated by you as a reward. Then naturally that woman is, if she respects you enough, and if your mindset makes sense to her, she's going to align herself with what she does in your presence with your program, right? Now, if your program is about sex, there can be instances of it in there, or there can be like protocols, certain things that you like or that you require, but you can't negotiate desire. So, having both a program and expecting a woman to want you more than she wants you is not necessarily realistic, right? You have to let her desire come and go as it pleases. Just only deal with her and interact with her if it's on a high enough level for you. If not, you need to pull back, or you need to end the situation if it's not on point. And I know it's going to be hard for some of y'all to hear that, because y'all going to be like, well, a lot of guys haven't gotten to the point where women are consistently feeling that way about you. Shit, a lot of the times I don't deal with women who consistently feel that way about me. But that's why you're protecting yourself. You're only interacting with the woman in a period of time, or only linking up with her when she's showing a desire level that's high enough. Don't even think about those other things that she has to offer unless you're willing to truly desexualize the relationship. Because once you put that weight on the relationship where it's both sexual and non-sexual, you might be taking a lot of energy away from that woman, depending on where her respect level is versus her attraction level is versus how much she actually believes in what you're doing and what you talk about. It's not always the case where that's what it is for a woman. That's not always the case. So along the way, you got to understand this. And I'm going to take it back to the examples of childhood. In childhood, back in the day, certain things that we consider abuse now are not what were considered abuse then, but there were still things that were considered abuse. It's about closeness. It's about intimacy. It's about the culture of that relationship. It's about informal speech or informal characteristics and behavior, what you're groomed in what your background entails. For some people, there's a lot of men out here right now. I just saw Terrence Crawford talk about this, because he was talking about this plenty, about how his mother would pay people $10 if they could beat him, and nobody ever got that $10. But she would pretty much bully him, right? Talk down on him, and his father was the one who would tell his mother that he was going to be a champion, right? But it was the polarizing, it was the contrasting of those two things. If it was just one or the other, it probably wouldn't have worked, right? If it was just Terrence Crawford's mother talking bad on him, he probably would have stuck in the streets. His mother created the tension through the abusive behavior, and then his father encouraged the way that he would sublimate and transmute that hurt. How he would sublimate and transmute his reaction to those feelings that he had that were negative, right? Wanting to prove people wrong. So that's why, like, some people don't have quote unquote Stockholm syndrome. They just understand and appreciate the cost of what it took to get where they were going to. And that's a real conversation to have. So understand that in a lot of these different contexts, that back in the day, if someone was and it's same thing still applies today a little bit. If someone is invested enough in you, if someone shows that they know and understand you, possibly even better than you know and understand yourself, right? And not only do they know and understand you, possibly better than you know and understand yourself, it can also be a situation where you trust, just like a doctor or a chiropractor or a massage therapist or whatever it is, that if this individual corrects you, and maybe even corrects you harshly in a way that goes outside of or confronts you in a way that you wouldn't want the average individual speaking to you or dealing with you or handling you, that you would receive it and you would allow that to be kind of like a buzz, kind of like a wake-up call to say, okay, let me get my shit together, right? Okay, let me get right. Because this person cares about me, and they wouldn't do this unless they meant it, unless it was serious. Then it becomes more of a wake-up call. There's different ways you got to do it now, and I think that's the natural way humans operate. Things escalate. The less someone cares about you, and the more self-controlled they are, the more likely they are to leave from interacting with you before it escalates to a level that they would consider rude. So there are so many people in your life who will never tell you that you're wrong, or who will never confront you, and they don't care enough to confront you because their mentality is not my problem. So they might encourage you to do whatever you want to do that's pretty dumb, that's pretty stupid. But then when push comes to shove and you're making a bad decision, they'll just ghost you, or they'll just like stop talking to you. They'll just distance themselves gradually, so you don't even know that they're gone. And if you try to look to those same people to get advice about how to go forward, they're not going to tell you anything, or they're not going to actually help you out. A lot of it's just gun flapping. Understand that, like, one thing my father taught me is that you have to listen to the people who will help you if the advice they give you doesn't work out, right? That's kind of how accountability works on some level. It's not always that case. Some people will just give you some advice that's for you. But oftentimes that is how things work. That's a piece of wisdom. But someone who's invested in your actual outcomes is going to have a vested interest. So it's going to depend on, is there proof of concept in what you're talking about to where a logical person can look at that and say, that makes sense to me. Can they resonate with you or believe in whatever you're trying to do enough for them to be able to say, you know what, I can see it, I can piece it together yet? Because sometimes that faith in you is that you know that there's a goal that you want to reach, or something that you want to do, something that you want to accomplish, but you don't know how to piece the pieces together. And when someone else has their own triggers or traumas revolving around the idea of whatever it is that you're trying to do, or their own misinformation or correct information, if they don't know what path you're trying to go into, they don't know what to do. So rather than truly seeing it as if you have a path or a trajectory that puts you into a position where you're going to make a decision that's best for everybody involved, the person's going to start off like encouraging the idea when they don't think you're serious, right? Or not knowing what level you're serious. And then after that, they may try to fluctuate, like, especially if they're invested in, they feel like what you're doing could divert their plans or cost them. They're probably going to fluctuate with whatever their nervous system is. So they're probably going to fluctuate between thinking that using reverse psychology is going to be effective versus trying to negotiate and have a direct conversation. But eventually it escalates, or it goes lower in the hierarchy of motivational ways of communication. So eventually a person's nervous system, they might get so frustrated with you that eventually they'll try to look at it like, they'll have to see that something's wrong with you or something's going on with you, so that they don't have to feel like it's a situation where you're just being blatantly disrespectful or being blatantly inconsiderate. They're going to fight with that, right? But they may not see that there is something that's connecting where you're trying to go and where you are, and that it's a gradual process. But this also reminds me of the Acrimony movie a little bit. You got to take care of yourself in the meantime adequately. As long as you're able to adequately take care of yourself in the meantime of whatever you're trying to do, and you're not costing someone else energetically too much, then if they believe in you or they like you, typically they're going to have some patience with you. It's when your dreams are costing other people is when it becomes an issue. That's when it becomes an issue, for real. So as we get deeper into this conversation, we're talking about informal speech. A lot of informal speech when it comes to relationships, dom-sub dynamics, is that there's a sexual component. The sexual component allows for there to be a way of expressing oneself through the extreme stimuli of intense sexual pleasure, or of using this sexual arousal to open up the range of the type of interaction someone is willing to have. So oftentimes what a woman feeling safe with you does is it allows her to open up to the level of sexual attraction and the level of submissiveness that's there, the level of whatever is informal or goes outside of her social mask, right? That's what her being safe with you does. So many women have degradation kinks. Many women have praise kinks. Many women have breeding kinks. Listen, all I'm talking about is regular shit. People who aren't into BDSM, if they hear these things and how they're defined, they're going to sound normal. But understand, this is why I talk to y'all about this shit. A lot of the things that regular people are into can be considered BDSM. And without it being labeled as such, and understanding that it's kink, and incorporating understanding of that into the relationship, all it takes is for that woman or that man to go to therapy and realize that they're getting abused or manipulated in some type of way, right? You know, so there's choking, there's impact play, right? There's different, there's gunplay, there's knife play, there's blood play. It's different things that people do. People have different kinks and fetishes. Once you gain the ability to communicate and understand the verbiage and language, and I'm not saying use that to try and negotiate desire. I'm saying have a box or have a channel, have lanes for the desire that a woman is showing and expressing towards you to go into, right? So she can have some containment. You're giving her a container. That's what you're giving her when you have that program. That's what you're giving her. The program is not really something that a woman works up to unless she's just gradually growing how she feels towards you over time through interaction. The program is something that if a woman's really feeling you, oftentimes she's attracted to you at a high enough level, this is probably less than the ultimate of what she wants, not only in title, you know, as far as the grand scheme of her life, but that may be all she wants right now, as far as being your submissive or something. But then there's also the component of the minimum that you set it at. She wants more of the domination. Like if you're dealing with a woman who's truly submissive towards you, because this is why cup space is important. Like a low-level submissive woman, that'd be like a masculine submissive exercise and self-control. I'm talking about like other feminine submissive women. So that woman who's the masculine submissive exercise and self-control, she might have moments of climbing up into more of a limerent state or more of an activated state. So you might have just like a limerent stage, which is the beginning part of a relationship, and then you have those moments where she's activated or she's guilty. I'll just tell you some real shit. So she's activated or she's guilty, or you check her in just the right way, then that oftentimes will bring about this desire to be sexually submissive towards you. And the truth is that if a woman isn't attracted to you on a high enough level, sometimes that may be the only way that she feels a high enough level of sexual attraction to get down with the things you're trying to get down with. And that's very dangerous. I've been down that path. And when you go down that path of like the natural progression into brat taming, knowing that that's what it's like, relationships can easily turn abusive, because all it takes is for it not to work and for you to be hinging on it going to work, right? It's like when you're talking shit and you're like, because I've had a woman hit me with a false accusation like that before, right? I've had a woman before, we were in a dom sub dynamic, it was really just brat taming, and in the process of it, you know, I'm not gonna get too deep into the story right now. I don't know how much space I have on my phone, but that's pretty much how it went. There's one time where, you know, we ain't linked up in a while, and then we had a conversation, and then along the lines of us having this conversation with each other, she said she was not dealing with me anymore, or she didn't say outright she wasn't dealing with me anymore, but she was insinuating it. And I caught her hand in the cookie jar. When I caught her hand in the cookie jar, what did I tell her? I said, you know what? It's not even worth it, because at this point, you would have to be my sex slave for 2 days and 2 nights to get back on my good side, right? That intrigued her so much that she was like, oh, I'm not on your good side anymore. I accept the challenge, right? Maybe 6 months later, I'm not sure exactly how many months later, a bunch of stuff transpired through then. And then I tried to hit her with the same thing again. She screenshotted, told a bunch of people I was trying to coerce her. And we never had a conversation that we weren't dealing with each other anymore. Like, we never had no straight up conversation, oh, we're not dealing with each other anymore. It was just like we were flirting, and then that's just how it went. So you have to set a high standard when you're a dom about how attracted a woman needs to be to you. If you just want to be the masculine, submissive exercise and self-control, or you want to be integrated and just have that little bit of a life partner type of companionship, that quote unquote healthy relationship, then cool, right? You may not need that immediate level of sexual attraction, as long as you accept that the relationship may come and go, right? You may not need that much influence if that's not what you're looking for. But something also important to understand is that if what you're seeking first and foremost is a dom sub dynamic, you want to integrate through polarity, then if your goal is to integrate through polarity, you have to move about things in a different way. There needs to be a minimum level of sexual attraction that woman feels towards you if sex is going to be a large component or a surmisable component of what your program consists of. You know, trying to think that you're just going to meet a woman who's like a friend to you and that you're going to have a great relationship, you know, if that's not like, if that's your main girl and your main girl don't have that high enough like level of desire for you, the high enough level of sexual receptiveness, man, eventually you probably gonna go through imposter syndrome. No matter how many women you fuck out here, no matter how many women, like even if you negotiate some type of non-monogamous arrangement, you're probably gonna go through imposter syndrome. And it's probably going to occur when she meets a man she actually can feel that way towards, right? If she meets a man she can actually feel that way towards, then that might create an environment where now you're going through imposter syndrome because you spend years thinking that woman wasn't all the way like that. Or you knew it, but you fought it. Or you thought, okay, well, she's strong enough to fight it. No, you can't move with that type of mentality. You got to understand that you either got to be that guy or let her fuck that guy in peace. So if you accept that a woman doesn't feel all that way about you on the level that you want her to, that doesn't mean she can't or that she won't feel that way about somebody else at some point in time. And yes, them being a new guy, there being a component of novelty, curiosity, excitement, new relationship energy, limerence, that absolutely can do it. And sometimes it's not even forever. Sometimes it's just a momentary thing where a woman feels that way. And there are ways of transmuting that if a woman feels safe with you and she respects you enough. But if your nervous system gets too activated and now you accusing her of shit or now you're lashing out at her, she's not going to be able to maintain feeling safe. And a lot of it is about you not making your program about what a woman does when you're not around. She has her own life to live. If you feel like that honesty ain't something that you can handle, then maybe you don't need to be kitchen table with your shit. Maybe you need to mind your business. You don't have to stay with a woman if you don't like how she's treating you, right? If a woman, if her energy get too low, like if you decide you're gonna mind your business, be on some Dale Gribble type of time, and she's not on point, then you pull back or you leave. Like, assume anytime she's not on point, it's another nigga there, and then you give her some space, because sometimes that's your way of rebuilding that tension. See, a truly submissive woman, I'm gonna tell you some real shit. A lot of niggas don't know about this. A woman who's like high level feminine submissive, getting closer towards integrated but not quite there, and she feels high level feminine submissive towards you, she is with you directly for that feeling that you give her as her dominant. So in that containment, that good D and that guidance, right? That good D, that guidance, that safety, that containment, and this is what intensifies how intoxicating your affection is. This is what intensifies how intoxicating just your presence, and when you're affectionate with her, when you're gentle with her, when you're sweet with her. But a woman who's truly submissive on a high level will let you know if you're being a little bit too nice, if you're taking your foot off her neck a little bit too much. See, once you experience that, you know, okay, some women, they'll be able to communicate it. So instead of them just getting the ick and fucking off or leaving you alone, if they trust that if you know what's going on, that you'll be able to do something about it. A woman who's on a high level feminine submissive, oftentimes she may communicate with you, but oftentimes that only happens because a woman's already been in a situation where she's felt similar about a man, and she fucked it up by doing the wrong thing at the wrong time. Then that woman is like, nah, I don't want to take that risk right now, right? Some women, they can separate sex from emotions pretty well. So if they just get a little itch, they just need to scratch, it's not going to affect the relationship. Some women, if they are feeling a little bit off about the relationship, or they're feeling a little unsure about things, regardless of the title of the relationship, they'll go dip off. And then some women, they know that if they sleep with somebody else, that their feelings are going to be gone, or that they're going to get attached to that individual, or that it's going to divert their attention for a little while. So that's why some women will choose to be mono-poly. Like, even though you may be poly, even though you may have multiple women, some women will still choose that I only want to have one man I'm sleeping with right now. And that even if it's not for forever, just for that period of time that they take and dig from, especially if they get some containment with it. And then from that space of having that containment, they may want to explore some of their bisexuality, or enjoy women together. You know, it's different ways it can work. You don't have to listen to the ethical non-monogamy community about some of their shit. It's a lot of propaganda. It's a lot of motives going on with the ethical non-monogamy community as far as the politics and stuff. So I'm not really with all that. Like, I don't think that the conversation about trying to spin monopoly or one penis policy relationships or unicorn hunting or whatever it is, I don't see trying to spin that as transphobic, as a conversation that is ever relevant to your bedroom, right? What is like, see, I'm gonna give y'all some new words. Call it phallophobia. Say you're afraid of penises, and it has nothing to do with gender. What'll happen next? Oh, then she might get comfortable if a trans man come over, and then you cracking a stud or a trans man, and now she uncomfortable. Hey, check this out, right? It's not about what gender you are, what sex you are. It's about what sex you have sex with. It's never been the same. Like, whether you're a man or a woman, most people, if they find out you're getting penis put up in you, especially by multiple men, they're going to look at it with a certain level of scrutiny, unless they're like extremely liberal or extremely open-minded, or they just have a kink for it. And if you're a man, or whether you're a man or a woman, if you're sleeping with women, people are typically, if you're getting coochie, right, you're sleeping with an attractive woman, whether you're a man or a woman, people are typically either going to praise it or be neutral towards it, unless they're extremely religious, right? Unless they're extremely judgmental. So the whole idea of like judgmental and body count and all this other stuff and saying it's a double standard, no, it's not a double standard. It's about who you sleeping with. It's not about if you sleep with people. Shit, if a woman want to call you misogynistic for saying body count at the same, and listen, every woman I've ever loved had more bodies than me at the time that I met them, right? So I'm not even somebody who cares about body count. Shit, my first love,
when we first started dealing with each other, she had like twice the amount of bodies. My second love, well, we started dating each other, she probably had like twice the amount of bodies. I've had several, the most submissive women I've ever dealt with were women who had much more experience. Not necessarily much more as far as quality, but as far as quantity of partners. Because oftentimes women with more experience can appreciate some good dick. Some women who don't have a lot of experience can get some great dick as like their first long-term partner. And then they don't even know what they got. And then they go out into the streets thinking that they're going to have a great time. They get to deal with some dudes who may be a little bit more attractive, maybe a little bit better looking. They might deal with some guys who got some money. But most of the time, either they're going to get left off, they're going to get exposed to the reality of hookup culture, which is that most dudes just want to hit it and quit it. Most dudes who want a relationship are going to be real tender, and you're going to get the ick, because once you've been exposed to good dick on that level, a man pursuing you is no longer something that you respect, right? And then there's a bunch of weirdos out there, and then there's going to be, I'm not saying that this is the same thing as weirdo, but there's going to be some bisexual men and some down low men. Once you reach a certain level of freaky, a lot of the men that you're going to come across are going to be men who are like down low, right? There's going to be a lot of good D dudes who ain't got no money, right? And there's going to be a lot of dudes with money who ain't got it. And then there's going to be some dudes who got everything who would never even think about taking your ass serious for anything but being a fling. And I don't want women to come to me like with that mentality in mind of, okay, I'm just looking for the best overall package, like the jack of all trades type of thing. You know, that's cool from an integrated perspective, but my ego's a little too big for that. So for me, I like women, when I use the biology first approach, who have that pure level of sexual attraction towards me. And then I bring in the other skills and traits and qualities that I have as needed, you know, over time, which means that I under promise and over deliver. And typically, as long as a woman's dealing with me, a lot of things in the relationship will continue to get better. But by making dominance more of a reward rather than making that domination a punishment, right? What this does is it helps you a lot with consent, especially if you deal with like oppositional defiance, especially if you deal with different like psychological reactants. And just the whole concept around having to ask permission for shit, knowing that a woman likes you, it's a turn off. And you've seen women get turned off by it. You've seen women dry up or lose some of that spark when you're trying to talk about consent and whatnot. If you get a woman turned on enough to where she's seeking consent from you, it's a different type of ordeal, right? If you get women turned on enough to where they're freaked out and they want to be dominated, then you get to say, okay, this is how you need to interact with me non-sexually. This is what I expect you to do. But you have to be able to hold tension for that. If you can't hold tension, it's not going to work for you. Because if you're talking to a woman who barely even wants to fuck you at all, or you're talking to a woman who barely even wants to like touch you, and that's not what it is, she's only attracted to you giving her instructions. Like if she's like tepidly attracted to you on a sexual level, she's only attracted to those instructions as long as those instructions aren't connected directly to her being consistently sexually active with you. So, you know, you can find a woman who's not extremely sexually attracted to you, who will respect you and desire to be submissive with you. Just understand that that type of woman is submissive because of the desexualized focus of your dominance, displaying your masculinity through your ability to display leadership skills. And that there's nothing wrong with that. Just understand that those type of relationships only work as long as the woman has a higher sex drive than you, right? Or it only works as long as, I'll say, as long as you're providing, right? So if you're providing financially and you have a higher sex drive, then if that woman hasn't been exposed to certain things or there's trauma that came along with like some good dick broke guys, then the leadership, desexualized leadership mixed with you financially providing containment in that way, making a woman feel somewhat safe, but giving her some grounds to move within, she'll get in that system, and then she'll take her time, right? And then eventually she'll get comfortable, her hand get caught in a cookie jar, and then once Pandora's box opens up, like in those scenarios, she may already be like contained in that relationship, focused just on you within reason. So that's where she can flourish within her submissiveness. But that may not necessarily be submissiveness that's stretching her like in a rip the Band-Aid type of way. I'm the type of dom who likes to rip the Band-Aid. Like I'll like, I've never taken a woman out on the first date as an adult before we've had some type of sexual like contact. That's why I lead with my foot fetish. That's why I like to suck toes, give foot rubs, get some head, you know, because I'm trying to lessen and mitigate some of the risk. But, you know, I've throat trained women, throat pies on the first night, you know, giving them throat gasms within the first 2-3 links. This is like a regular thing for me. Like, I can look at a woman and say, okay, I can make her cry on it, right? Like, I can look at a woman and know certain things about her just from how she walks, how she talks, how I interact with her. So for me, I like to under promise and over deliver sexually, setting the initial entry point on some kink or fetish, or some type of a combination of kink, fetish, and common interest, but especially just the kink and fetish, and then peep and see if we have a common interest, and then talk to her and go from there. And then once she's shown a certain level of receptiveness based off of how consistently receptive she's been, then I'll have sex with her, right? And it's a reward. It's like, okay, you've been receptive to me, you've been talking to me nice, you've been dealing with me a correct way, maybe you were willing to make a trip, or maybe, you know, you spent some money on me, you cooked for me, you did something to where I'm rewarding you with dick. And a woman who doesn't feel insecure about the idea of being rewarded with sex is near the epitome of what you could or really should expect from a woman who is submissive. Because if she can be rewarded with sex, that means that you can speak to her pretty much without a filter. I don't want to say completely without a filter, but you can pretty much speak to that type of submissive woman and just talk to her regular, right? As long as you maintain the boundaries of still being Big Daddy, as long as you maintain the boundaries of understanding she's a woman, you could pretty much talk to her like she one of the bros. And, you know, she probably gonna be bisexual, like women, so, you know, she likes looking at women too. That's the type of woman who says, you know, I'm no better than a man. Like, that's the type of woman who will, like, want to trick on a man. Like, if she like a guy enough, she like, I like to spend money on you, I want to take care of you too, right? So, like, you know, once you experience the type of woman who will say, when you're giving me that dick, when your presence is in my life, and you making me feel safe, and you just dominating me, and I just get to shut my brain off around you, if you're going through something that takes you away from being able to be in a space of mind where you can give me that consistently, then I'll do what it takes to mitigate whatever is in the way of that. Like, I want to be like, oh, you're not seeing me right now because you're stressed about this bill, I'll go ahead and pay it for you, right? It's a sassy nigga apocalypse. But you got to get your sex game up. You got to get your power level up, right? You got to get it up high enough to where you can create that experience, those emotions, that sequence of thoughts, those psychological frameworks within the women that you deal with. So this is Coach Brody. I'm out.
If you can pull this off, this will change your sex life for forever. And what you're trying to pull off is making dick a maybe. And a lot of men don't know how to do that without finding themselves in a situation where plausible deniability is in the favor of the woman. Like, taking women on dates is that, right? There are instances where you can take a woman out on a date and she wants sex more, but most of the time you're already giving her the validation that makes her feel comfortable in that environment. So what you want to do is lead with your sexual intentions first, but make it about your kinks, make it about your fetishes, make it about some type of activity that you like to engage in that's not vaginal intercourse. So if the woman tries to come at you and she's on some, well, I don't just have sex with anybody or everybody or anything along those lines, be like, hey, I haven't agreed to fuck you yet. I haven't said I wanted to fuck you yet. I'm still deciding, right? And this gives the woman the opportunity to do something she rarely ever gets to do, which is work for dick. If you make a woman feel that way, such the level of anticipation, such the level of tension, that woman will oftentimes maybe be willing to pay for it. She'll be willing to work for it. She'll be willing to try to show up as the best she can to guarantee access to the dick, right? Dick is a gift. Dick ain't free, right? Place a buffer in the way of vaginal intercourse. Make dick a maybe. If dick is a maybe and you can pull it off, this will change your sex life for forever.
My body was next. You made love to
Nigga, why did you do that?
The hoes are watching.
That nigga is just like me.
Talking to the men. Let's have a conversation, right? Let's have a conversation. It's about to be 2026, right? 2026. And I see what y'all niggas is out here doing. I've been through it myself. No more dick on an empty stomach. That shit is over with. If she can't feed you, right? And make sure that there's some food for there when you get there, you gotta be on your Dariad. Dariad, straight Dariad. No more dick on an empty stomach. Why your dick hard and your stomach empty? Right? Now, from now on, if my stomach empty, I got erectile dysfunction. Bitch, call it what you want. You can call me gay, sassy. I don't give a fuck. If I ain't eat yet, ain't no fucking going on. Ain't no bottoms of the pussy getting touched. Right? Huh? Ain't no making you cry on the dick. Right? And if you, ooh. And I had this one bitch, she thought she was so fucking slick. Right? She thought she was so slick. Trying to come while sucking my dick. Bitch, you ain't feed me yet. I was horny that night, so I let it get by. Right? Because it wasn't supposed to be no throat time. She was trying to sneak off on me with the throatgasms. Hey, I'm going to tell you some shit, right? Some of these girls out here will tell you that they want to be your submissive just so you can give them the Heimlich. Right? That's crazy. They'll tell you they want to be your submissive just so they can get throat trained. That's fucking ridiculous. Right? So now I got to sort through adding throat training to my free trial now because it keep happening. My power level got too high, and then I started bridging that throat chakra, before I even get there. So it's opened up on the first link up, and it's like, what the fuck? You start getting scared of your dick. You don't even want to hit it. Right? So check this out. Dick. No more dick on an empty stomach. It's Coach Brody. I'm out.